What if I told you one man was responsible for the death of 45 million people, partly by trying to make sparrows go extinct? What if another man, a failed artist, industrialized murder on a scale the world had never seen, creating actual factories for death? And what if a third leader declared himself the conqueror of the British Empire, while allegedly keeping his enemies' heads in a freezer as trophies? These aren't villains from a movie. These men were real. They held absolute power, and they used it to warp reality and destroy millions of lives. How does one person gain that much control, and what did they do with it? Today, we're exploring the most infamous dictators in history, explained in 10 minutes. Now, we obviously can't cover every tyrant, but we're hitting the highlights, the ones whose names have become synonymous with terror. We're skipping the complex political theory and focusing on the core of their power and their most shocking legacies. Let's start with the name everyone knows, Adolf Hitler. Before he was the Führer, he was a failed artist and a bitter corporal from World War I. He harnessed Germany's crushing humiliation, and he solidified his power with ruthless violence. On the night of the Long Knives, he had his own political allies murdered, eliminating any internal threat. But his most shocking fact isn't just one thing. It's the system he built. He didn't just inspire hatred, he industrialized it. The Holocaust wasn't just murder. It was a factory line for genocide. The systematic, bureaucratic, and industrial extermination of 6 million Jews. Alongside them, millions of others, Slavs, the Roma people, the disabled, political opponents, and LGBTQ individuals. He preached racial purity while his own health was failing, kept functional by a daily cocktail of drugs, including methamphetamine. He wanted a 1,000-year Reich, but in the end, he forced children as young as 13 to fight. He died by suicide in a bunker, having reduced Europe to rubble. Next, Hitler's main rival and one-time ally, Joseph Stalin. His name literally means man of steel. Stalin was a bank robber and a master manipulator. His primary opponent, Leon Trotsky, was exiled and later hunted down and assassinated with an ice axe in Mexico. Stalin's brand of terror was paranoia. He trusted no one. In the 1930s, he launched the Great Purge, executing or imprisoning hundreds of thousands of his own party members and military leaders. The most chilling fact? His secret police, the NKVD, often operated on quotas. Local officers were given a number of people they had to arrest, torture, and execute as enemies of the state. It didn't matter if they were guilty. They just had to meet the number. His other horrifying act? The Gulags, a vast network of brutal slave labor camps, mostly in the frozen Arctic of Siberia, where millions were worked to death. And then there's the Holodomor, an engineered, man-made famine in Ukraine that starved millions. Estimates of civilian deaths under his rule range from 20 to 30 million. But when it comes to sheer numbers, one man surpasses both. Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic of China. Mao's legacy is defined by two catastrophic campaigns. First, the Great Leap Forward. Mao decided China would surpass Western industrial production by forcing millions of farmers to make steel in backyard furnaces. The result? The steel was useless. And since no one was actually farming, the country collapsed into the single worst famine in human history. We're talking 15 to 45 million deaths. Part of this campaign included the Four Pests campaign, where Mao ordered the entire population to kill sparrows. The result? Insect populations exploded, devouring what few crops were left. When his power slipped years later, he launched the Cultural Revolution. He empowered radical youths called the Red Guards to destroy China's old ways. They publicly humiliated, tortured, and killed intellectuals and teachers. Everyone was forced to carry the little red book of Mao's quotations. If you were caught without it, you could be beaten to death. If Mao's rule was about catastrophic ideology, Pol Pot's was about pure ideological insanity. He led the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, and in 1975, he declared Year Zero. This wasn't just a slogan. He literally tried to reset civilization. He ordered the complete evacuation of all cities, forcing millions, doctors, teachers, shopkeepers, into the countryside to become slave labor farmers. He abolished money. He banned religion. He closed all hospitals. His shocking fact is who he targeted. Pol Pot's regime executed anyone considered intellectual. How did they define that? By wearing glasses, or speaking a foreign language, or even having soft hands. The most infamous symbol was the S-21 prison. It was a former high school where over 17,000 enemies were sent. Only 12 are known to have survived. They photographed thousands of their victims right before they tortured and executed them. In just 4 years, Pol Pot murdered an estimated 1.7 to 2 million of his own people. That was nearly a quarter of Cambodia's entire population. Most dictatorships die with their founder, but one has achieved something unique. It became a family business, the Kim Dynasty in North Korea. It started with Kim Il-sung, the eternal president, who created a bizarre state ideology called Juche, or self-reliance. The shocking fact is the 3 generations of punishment rule. If you commit a political crime, it's not just you who goes to a brutal prison camp. It's your entire family for 3 generations to cleanse the bloodline. His son, Kim Jong-il, inherited this power. He was obsessed with movies. He actually kidnapped a famous South Korean director and his actress wife, forcing them to make films for him. He also maintained a kippumjo, or pleasure squad, groups of young women taken from schools for high-ranking officials. Now his grandson, Kim Jong-un, rules, maintaining that control through fear, propaganda, and a massive nuclear program. Finally, we have the man who defined brutal and bizarre, Idi Amin of Uganda. Amin was a charismatic army commander who seized power in a 1971 coup. But his rule quickly descended into terror. His official title was His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal Al-Haji Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the seas and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular. He wasn't joking. He famously declared war on the United States and then declared himself the winner the very next day. But this comedy masked pure horror. In 1972, he ordered the expulsion of Uganda's entire Asian population, over 80,000 people, giving them just 90 days to leave. His secret police death squads murdered an estimated 300,000 Ugandans. He gained international infamy when he personally welcomed and protected terrorists who had hijacked a passenger plane and held Israeli passengers hostage. And then there are the persistent, horrifying legends, rumors that he fed his enemies to crocodiles, and that he practiced cannibalism, allegedly keeping the severed heads of his rivals in a freezer. Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, the Kims, Idi Amin, their methods were different. Some used racial ideology, some used paranoid conspiracy, others used bizarre cults of personality. But they all shared 3 things: a thirst for absolute power, a total disregard for human life, and the ability to convince enough people to go along with it, either through fear or fanaticism. The lesson isn't just that these men were monsters. It's that Under the right conditions of fear, economic desperation, and relentless propaganda, monsters can be given power.